1,000 hours outside, behind the scenes of how it came about.
So we were getting outside about 18 to 20 hours a week on average. At one point I added it up, and it was about 1,200 hours a year that we were getting outside. And that exactly matched the amount of time kids were on screens in America at the time. The average kid is outside for 4 to 7 minutes a day playing freely, but on screens for 4 to 7 hours. Elderly people who dance regularly have a 76% less chance of developing dementia. Well, why? It's because complex movements enhance and protect the neural wiring in your brain. So when you allow kids to move in complex ways, which is what they do outside, it is helping and improving their cognition.
People need pro tips for screens. Like, how do they handle screens living in this age with kids?
Yes. Okay. I think the pro tip is this.
Jenny, welcome.
It is amazing. It's amazing to be here. We have a live studio audience today.
Yes, we do. I have to say this. The first time in the Art of Being Well history, my son's been here for a few episodes, but behind the scenes, our spouses are here.
Yes.
Your husband, Josh, my wife, Amber. This is a big deal for me to have them both here with us.
It is for me too.
We should get them mic'd is really what we should do.
Yeah, I'm sure that they have really important things to say. Yeah. Probably more important than I have to say.
No, please. But no, Amber would not want to be mic'd here, but the people would love it. No? We're saying no? Okay, never mind.
Well, we met at a conference, and I think we talked about maybe bringing you on stage, and you were like, absolutely not. Don't do it.
Yeah, if I am introverted and like I am in many ways, she's next level when it comes to public speaking, but she's actually a really talented speaker.
Oh, I'm sure. And dancer, I hear.
Yes, and tap dancer extraordinaire. Mm-hmm. But okay, so let's go back to how did we get connected? I think the synchronicity of this is wild when I was thinking about this, because you reached out last summer. And I mean, massive. You have a lot of fans in the Cole home, and even my sister-in-law was visiting from Canada. Massive fan of yours, like so many fans of what you're doing in our family. And it was an honor that you reached out to me, and I was so excited to go on your podcast. And you're a great interviewer. So many people have podcasts, but not everybody should have a podcast. You have a deep talent for what you do, honestly.
Well, thank you.
Public speaking and podcasts, you are the GOAT. You are so good at it. So I look up to you for that for sure. But right after I was on the podcast, we were both in Michigan together.
Yes. Yes. And I was with Amber.
My wife, Amber, yeah.
At this conference. So all of those things aligned right around the same time. We went and got breakfast together at this really cool place in Franklin,
Tennessee, Urban Market, which we talked about in the pod before. Yes. They are not sponsored, but they should be at this point. It's a sponsor because they're so good. But yeah, you're right. You met up with Amber at the homeschooling conference in Tennessee, and then we were outside of Kellogg's picketing or rallying the peaceful troops. What was that like for you doing Kellogg's?
I was really honored. I think people talk a lot about staying in your lane, and so I get a lot of that. Stay in your lane. But I've always just shared what works for our family, what we're learning about, what we're trying to do. And for me, we're here to fight for the wellness of children. And I think that there's a battle on all fronts. So I was very honored to be there. It was very exciting. I got to use the bullhorn. Is that what it's called?
You did.
I think I was made for that.
You were made for that. The streets of, what was that town? Battle Creek, Michigan.
Yes. Yeah, so cool that it was right in Battle Creek. And I think my kids didn't like that I had the bullhorn, but I was pretty into it.
It was great. So we had how many? 1,000 people.
Yeah, it was huge.
The largest food petition in American history, as far as I know.
Yeah.
A couple 100,000 people and counting signed the petition to remove artificial dyes from Kellogg's. That's what we're talking about here.
And they'd already said they were going to, and they didn't do it.
Right. So what's the story behind that? For people that don't know, catch them up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact dates, but it was like they had said, we're going to remove we're going to remove it by 2018. And it was 2024 and they hadn't done it. And all of these things are linked to all sorts of problems for children. I loved when Dr. Josh Axe got up and he talked about his own story where he said, I really struggled in school and I couldn't pay attention. And all of these teachers said, you're going nowhere. And he said he changed his food and it changed everything for him, including his academics.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so cool. How did you get connected to that group? Did you know Vonnie before? So I got connected with Vonnie through my podcast. Oh, okay.
She had a book coming out, and she already followed 1,000 Hours Outside. So there was a mutual connection there already because she was trying to get her kids outside, and I had some of her books. And so I think there was a lot there that I've taken from her. I really like where she's talking about all of the things that people have come against her, and she's out there sharing all of these truths that she's learned, and she's getting all of this pushback, huge pushback. And it gives you a lot of bravery to read books like hers. And then she's got her cookbook. So we connected through the podcast, and then she had just asked if we would scope it out, actually, because she knew we lived in Michigan. So she said, well, you go scope it out. And then she said, could you speak for 60 seconds? I mean, that's an interesting thing when you're used to maybe you do a presentation, it's 60 minutes.
Yeah.
How do you boil something down to a minute and a half or something like that?
You did an amazing job. Everyone's favorite was your speech.
Oh, Josh was like, make sure you don't yell into the microphone. That was like his only advice. And I can't not yell into the microphone. It's a problem.
Well, and then hence the bullhorn right afterwards.
That's it.
And then we got to the Kellogg's headquarters, and that was...
It was very disappointing. And I thought for those kids, it was actually heart-wrenching that they would not open the door.
Lots of kids were there.
Lots of kids saying, let us in, and they're holding their signs, and they care. They care about their generation and the health of their generation. And they were met with nothing, just a security guard or two, and the woman up in the window that had a sign that said, get off our lawn.
Which, it's not going to age well.
No, it
the whole thing isn't. I mean, they blew when they did that. I'm like, this is going to be. You could have had a decent PR move of like, hey, we hear you. Even if they didn't do anything, it would have just been like, we hear you. Your voices are heard. They did the opposite of that. Yeah. And Jason Karp was there, who is on the board. Too. It's like he was a board member too. So anyways, so that was so cool to be a part of that with you. It was super cool. Fun experience for us all to get together on that. So let's jump into 1,000 hours outside. Like, what was I want the backstory.
I'm going to give it to you.
What's the behind the scenes of how it came about?
Okay. The backstory is that I was an awful mother. That's it. Period. End of sentence.
Okay, just hang on. The episode's over.
That was it. And I don't. Some people can relate, and some people I think eased into motherhood easier than I did. I thought I was going to be a total champ. I thought, how hard could it be? And I had this idea of a schedule that I was going to do. Some of my friends did schedules with their kids, and it was like these 2-hour time blocks. It's like no problem. So I was like the 8 a.m. time block. I'm gonna. We're going to nurse and then read some books, and then he'll nap and I'll exercise, and then it was like the 10 a.m. time block. And this is what my friends were doing. So I thought this is going to be no problem. What a breeze. And it just like fell apart from even the very beginning. Like we had, complications during the birth, and I had to collect my pee in a jug for a weekend. And then it was just a whole mess. Like I had a birth plan, and it all was out the window. And then all of a sudden I've got this baby, and he wouldn't do the schedule. It was like, nope, not doing that. I'm not going to get up at 8 a.m. I'm going to get up the whole night. And then I'm not ever going to go to sleep. And he never did the sleeping parts. In fact, I tell people in the hospital, the lactation consultant, she says, he has a voracious appetite. I was like, well, he's like 1 hour old. So I don't know. But he did. He just nursed all the time. He was massive. He got really big. And I was drowning. And then, thank goodness, 15 months later, we had another one. And then 17 months later after that, we had another one. So we had these 3 kids under 3, and I was flailing as a mom. I really just did not enjoy it at all. I loved my kids, but I did not enjoy it. And I had a friend of mine who I did MOPS with, which is now called MomCo, which is supposed to be this amazing. It is amazing, but they're supposed to be able to take your kids. You go for 2 hours, you could sit with these moms, and our kids always cried. So I would have my crying kids, but I met all these wonderful moms, and one of them told me about this educational philosopher named Charlotte Mason. Mm-hmm. She did not say that Charlotte Mason was from the 1800s. Charlotte Mason is from the 1800s, but she didn't say that. So I thought this was someone who was current. Charlotte, I know Charlotte's. And she said that Charlotte Mason says kids should be outside for 4 to 6 hours a day whenever the weather is tolerable. And I thought that was absurd. Who does that? We take kids to 45-minute library programs, and it's awful. I love the librarians, but you're trying to keep your kid from, biting the other kid or trying to get him to do the craft. So she says to me, we should try it. And I thought, no, that's an awful idea. What are these kids going to do for 4 to 6 hours? But I was desperate for friends, as I think a lot of moms are in those years. And so we decided to go to this park in 2011 in the fall in Michigan. It was beautiful, September. And we went from 9 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon. We didn't bring anything. Mm-hmm. No books, no crafts. I thought, what are these kids going to do? Just food, put out a picnic blanket. And I tell people it was the best day of my life because it was the first good day I had as a mom. I've been a mom for 3 years. I hadn't had a good day. And the kids just played. We each had 2 that were toddler preschool age and a babe in arms. And the babies would sleep and nurse and sit and look at the trees. And the other ones would run around. And then we left at 1 and they all fell asleep. And I was like, hallelujah. And it changed the whole course of mothering for me. So it started there. In time, I started to learn more about how when we take kids outside, it helps them in every facet of their development. It helps their emotional development. It helps their physical development. It helps their academic, their cognition, and it helps their social skills, and it helps them spiritually for families that are interested in that. And it also helped me too. So it was just this win-win-win. We weren't running into other kids. And so eventually I started to write about it just from the sake of how much it had changed our lives.
Wow. So what year was this? Did that happen?
2011, and then 2013 started writing about it.
Okay.
We had toddlers and babies and have had since 2 more kids. And now our kids are teens and it still works. I think that's a tricky thing about parenting is that you try something and you learn. You learn about potty training. You learn if you're a homeschooler, you learn like how am I going to teach my kids how to read, or how are we going to do this, that, or the other thing? And then it changes in a couple months. But going outside has been a mainstay that has worked for the whole time.
Yeah. So 4 to 6 hours.
That was what Charlotte Mason said. So what I ended up doing was we were going outside 4 to 6 hours with a small group of friends, just a couple other families, about 3 times a week whenever the weather was tolerable. That's what Charlotte Mason says. And I think that's important. It's not always tolerable. It might be really hot where you live in the summer, really cold in the winter. So we were getting outside about 18 to 20 hours a week on average. We're from Michigan, a little more in the spring, fall, and summer, and a little less in the winter. And at one point I added it up, which is a little odd, but I used to be a math teacher before I was a mom. And it was about 1,200 hours a year that we were getting outside. And that exactly matched the amount of time kids were on screens in America at the time, was 1,200 hours. And I had this thought, and I added it up because there was this statistic from Dr. Scott Sampson. He has a book called How to Raise a Wild Child that said the average kid is outside for 4 to 7 minutes a day playing freely, but on screens for 4 to 7 hours, which is sort of why I wanted to know, well, how much time are we outside? And when I saw that it matched, it just gave me pause. What if all of that time had gone to screens? How much less full would our life have been? And it just felt like it was such a worthy investment of our time to put it there. Not that we're against screens, but it's very out of balance. 4 to 7 minutes versus 4 to 7 hours. And the amount of time kids are on screens has even grown since then.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm thinking of the listener out there. What does bad weather look like? Like, what's your cutoff in living in Michigan in the winter? Like, how cold are we talking about? No, we're still doing this. We're still going outside.
Yeah. So, people are going to have different tolerances, right? Yeah. So I have family that would live in Florida. They'd come up in the summer wearing a parka. So we're like, you have a different level of tolerance. For me, 28 is that's pretty freezing cold, especially if there's wind. But we don't go out for that long of a period of time. This is why we have a year-long goal. We have a year-long goal because life has seasons, and that's figurative and literal. So life has seasons, and you may have a new baby, or you may have just had surgery, or you may have just moved and you're trying to regroup your life. All of these things happen, and that's what we do. So we're going to try and get out maybe for 20 minutes at least, or 15 or 20 minutes. Let's get some full spectrum light. Let's get some fresh air. Let's get some movement. And sometimes it goes longer. Sometimes you have a plan to go outside and walk a mile and you stay out a little bit longer. And sometimes it's miserable, so you come in a little early, but all of that helps develop grit. Yeah. There's really big benefits of being outside in weather that's not perfect.
Yeah, I've heard my Canadian telehealth patients, and my wife always said this too, is that there's no such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing.
Yeah,
bundle up and teach kids grit and being prepared and doing things. So what's you said, like, no books, nothing. Like, what is a typical time outside where the weather is good? Has it evolved over the years, or it pretty much is unscripted for you still?
It has evolved over the years as our kids have gotten older. But when they were young, and this is what I didn't know, they can just play. Yeah. And they play with what nature provides them. So it really is miraculous, I think, that a child can go outside with nothing. I mean, think about how many toys are for sale at a local toy shop or online. I mean, this is a huge business. So a couple good books that people are interested in learning more. Linda McGurk has a book called There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather. It's fantastic. She's from Scandinavia. That's a really good one. And Susan Lin wrote a book called Who's Raising the Kids? And she has another one about the case for make-believe, all about the toy industry and how this is kind of a big old racket. Kids can play with nothing and be very happy. And increasingly, the toys are becoming embedded with AI components. And so there's a little bit of danger there as well for kids to start to build relationships and form relationships with things that are not real. So there's some stuff that parents need to be aware of. But when our kids were young, I don't even know what they did. I mean, They would run around. They chased things. They threw rocks in creeks. They built stuff with sticks. They played pretend. And I would often have a chance to have a full conversation with a friend, which normally you don't get to have. Now, as our kids have gotten older, once they hit maybe 11, 12, then they would start going to the picnic table that was a little bit further away with all their friends, and they would talk, which is another form of play, that social play. And then as our kids have hit older teen years, we get to go adventure. And now, it's interesting to look back thinking about, I had a baby on my front, a baby on my back, carrying another one because they're crying. You're pushing the stroller with your stomach. You're like trying to get it to go.
Yeah, I know.
And the stroller has no children in it. It only has all of your stuff, food and blankets and extra clothes and shoes. I mean, you have everything because if they fall and they break their shoe and it breaks out, I mean, you have to have all its contingencies. You have all of it. And so now I'm running after them. They're the ones that are jumping off the cliff, into Lake Superior in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. They're the ones that I hiked with our oldest daughter in Colorado. I went out 4 mops for Momco to tape for them. And she wanted to do this hike to Emerald Lake at Rocky Mountain National Park. And I was 3.2 miles. I was like, no problem, 3.2 miles. But we had to wear these things on our shoes because it was in the snow, these like cleat things. And there's apparently no oxygen. I don't know. I was like, every 10th of a mile, I was like, I have to stop. And so I was heaving. I was like, so she'll be like, Mom, it's okay. We don't have to do it. And I was really exaggerating because I'm like, I don't want to go any further. This is like uphill, up. I can't breathe. I was like, so thinking she'll be like, it's okay, Mom. We can just go back to the car. And she just would stand there because she wanted to do it. And we did it. We did the whole thing. And I'm proud of us. And so what happens is you're leading your kids and then it turns and they're leading you.
That is beautiful. Okay, so now I'm thinking of the parents that their kids aren't homeschooled. They're go to a traditional school. Is this for them too, or is this mainly for homeschooled?
It's for everybody. It is for everybody. Yes.
Okay.
There are people all over the world that do this in all sorts of different situations. I always say it's not necessarily about the number. The number is research backed. There's a woman named Angela Hanscom who's a pediatric occupational therapist. She wrote this phenomenal book called Balanced and Barefoot. And she was on the front lines of seeing the decline in skills of children as an occupational therapist. All of a sudden, her wait list was a year long. And she founded this program called Timbernook, where the kids will go outside for 3 or 4 hours in mixed age play. And that was fixing a lot of the developmental delays because they're playing in the mud and they're running around with each other. And nature naturally scaffolds for kids so that they can, scaffold up or scaffold down, whatever they're interested in. But she talks about 3 hours a day. And she'll say that if you're listening and if you grew up in the 80s or the 90s, you may have had that built into your day. Mm-hmm. When I grew up, I had a morning recess, an afternoon recess, and a lunch recess. And they were all 45 minutes to an hour. I walked to school. It was a mile. So within just even that confine, there was that much time. I mean, you're getting outside for 2 to 3 to 4 hours in a day, play after school. There wasn't that much homework. But today, the recess is less. Mm-hmm. And so parents have to be a little bit more intentional about it. Mm-hmm. So, you're talking about a couple camping trips over the summer. You're talking about when you go on your week-long vacation, go to a place where you can go outside and do some hiking, utilize your evenings, and then adjust the number if you need to. If you're going to say, I'm going for 500 hours, or someone messaged me and they say, I'm a single mom, I have split custody, I'm aiming for 250 hours outside. It's really about being intentional about our time in a day and age when there are a lot of things that suck our time away.
Got it. So why have schools shrunk recesses? Like, why is that a thing?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons. I think one is litigation. So there's more issues for kids, more opportunities for kids to fall and get hurt the longer that they're out there. Angela Hanscom from the Balanced and Barefoot book, she talks about how it takes 45 minutes for kids to develop their play scheme. This is important. So you might go outside and for the first 45 minutes, your kids are saying, I'm bored. I have nothing to do. You have to wait it out. And so in that 0 to 45 minutes, I think there's a lot of bickering. What are we going to do? Well, I want to play this. I want to play that. So there can be a lot of that happening on the playground that the teachers don't want to have to deal with, or the monitors, they don't want to have to deal with that. And then there's just such a push for academics and for scores that we're discarding.
Yeah.
This
and
part
that's
of childhood.
Probably largely with funding and the schools getting the resources that they need.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back. You told to me offline, and maybe we can share about this. Like the kids haven't had to see a doctor since you've done this. So people's ears are ringing when they hear this. What's happened?
Well, I think this is what I didn't know. When we first went outside, I had a good day. And I thought, well, I'm just going to do this for my own mental health, for my own sanity. If I'm in a better place as a mom, then our family is going to run better. And what I noticed very, very quickly, like within a week or two, is all of a sudden our kids were more ruddy, is the word I used. Like they were, they just got like a little tougher, and they were starting to do things. Look at me, Mom, look at this. And it took me down this rabbit hole of learning how when kids play outside, it helps in all of these different areas. And so one of them is obviously their physical bodies. And it's not just movement. Movement is a big piece, right? When you're outside, you're going to move more. You're going to move in large body ways. You're going to do heavy work. It's helping you with all of your sensory integration, your vestibular sense and your proprioception and all of these different things. But it's stretching your ligaments. I mean, you're moving on uneven ground. There's a lot going on. But also you're moving your lymphatic system. And so that's happening. And then your body is connected to the full spectrum sunlight, which is in charge of over 100 body systems. So you're starting to sync up to that. And we had kids that were 3, 2, and an infant. And we go in for doctor's appointments. This kid's got this kid's got that. And since 2011, nothing. So it's all of these things that are working together in tandem. I don't think it's any one thing, but it's that fresh air. Yeah. It's all of that works together for the health of the kid. Not that I'm saying that's going to do that for every child, but there is a huge health component. Yeah. And it's not just movement. It's eyesight. The eye has a ring around it called the ciliary ring, I'm pretty sure. And it's always contracted when you have a short field of vision. Like your bicep would be contracted. And it's even contracted when you sleep. And the only time that it relaxes is when you have this long field of vision. Katie Bowman calls it long distance looking. It's like you have to have some long distance looking for your eyesight. So there's all of these physical things that are happening for kids when we take them outside beyond just simple movement.
Yeah. So what if someone lives in an urban area? I mean, parks, I'm assuming. Like any tips for people that maybe don't have a lot of green space?
Sure. People ask this a lot. So you're either in one of 3 situations. You're urban, you're suburban, you're in a neighborhood, or you're rural. And they all have their benefits. Actually, urban is phenomenal. I was telling you before we popped on, I got to go interview with this man named Neil Pasricha, who has a podcast called 3 Books in Toronto. And we interviewed walking around the streets of Toronto. And there were parks and different things. But if you live in the suburban area, you don't have that. Or if you live in a rural area, you've got nowhere to walk. And so it's really neat. You look at these different situations. If you're in an urban area, you might be walking to get your groceries. You might be walking to school. There's a lot of opportunity for movement there. And my parents live in a subdivision. And so that one time around their block is 1,000 steps. They know that. They have all of these different routes that they take for moving. They've got neighbors that they see. And then we are rural, so we could have a cow, or, kids can go out and do chores. However, we have no friends. I mean, there's no one for the kids to play with, and that's tricky. So each situation provides pros and cons. I think it's fun to, if you can, bop in and out. If once a year, twice a year, you can go to a cool city and walk around. If you live on a farm, or vice versa, if you live in the city, can you get out to a farm? Can you go spend a Saturday planting lavender, or whatever. Like there's all these opportunities, and I think that you just take what you've been given and where you're planted and try and make it work for your family. That's
cool. All right. So you gave some statistics about screen time, and you said at that time, like, has screen time usage for kids gone up since you started?
Yes, it has gone up.
So
they're talking
latest?
8 to 9 hours, and it doesn't include texting, and it doesn't include schoolwork. It is pretty much all of kids' time. I just talked to this man named Dr. Richard Freed, who wrote a book called better than real life. It's fantastic. And he talked about persuasive design, which is something that actually, even being in this field, I hadn't heard too much about. But persuasive design is meant to like hack your body's systems. Like, what is it that motivates you? And he said that the goal of the manufacturers of video games and social media is that a child will have no hobbies at all. And there's starting to be this, I guess, phenomenon called, I think it's called hikikomori, which is where people don't even leave their home. They don't leave their room. Kids are urinating on themselves because they don't want to leave their video games. Like, it has really gone to an extreme. There's a lot of addiction places that are popping up dealing with screen addiction in a lot of different realms. It could be gambling. It could be pornography. It could be video games. It could be social media. And so screen usage has gone up, as has sitting. Angela Hanscom just said the data for kids sitting is 9 hours a day.
Wow. Okay, so what's that you mentioned, the sort of hacking into their brains? It's shifting neural pathways. Like, what is that doing from an addiction standpoint? Is there some science on the...
Yeah, it's like the dopamine, right?
Yeah.
It's the dopamine, and it's that, and it's also sort of feeding into like the boy who wants to be the hero and the girl who wants to be noticed. So, you know, a boy has a primary need to conquer. Well, and that's been their motivation for forever, right? To get the girl and to conquer and to be a warrior. And the video games give them that. It tricks their brain into thinking that they're accomplishing something when they're not. And the same for the girls. I think a girl, you know, they want to be noticed. They twirl in their dress. So their daddy says, "Oh, you look so pretty, honey." Like, this is a primary wiring of a woman, of a girl. And so, you know, you go on social media and that's sort of hacking into those innate longings that we have. And it grabs the kids. It grabs them. And some are more prone than others, and you just don't ever know. That's what my mom always said to me. Like, we had alcoholism in our family, and my mom was like, "You just don't know. You don't know if you're going to be the one that's prone, so just don't try it." And I think that it's similar with the screen. Some kids are going to be more prone and some aren't, but you don't know.
So what has been, you know, having teenagers now, young kids gone through parenting, what people need pro tips for screens? Like, how do they handle screens living in this age with kids?
Yes. Okay. I think the pro tip is this. Consider what it was like in the 80s or the 70s. What screens were like in those times where they were bound in societally. So I think I talked about this at Kellogg's. Society used to have boundaries in place that protected childhood. I don't necessarily know if they were on purpose or not, but if you take the 80s or the 90s and let's say you didn't have cable, we didn't have cable, then you could watch Full House on Monday night from 8 to 8:30. Right. There's 8 TGIF. Right. And then it ended. Yeah. And they maybe did 20 shows a year, and then it was reruns, and reruns are boring. And on Saturday, you could watch cartoons from 9 to 12, and then it was over. And on Sunday, there was nothing. And there weren't these YouTube videos or all of this extra...
endless content.
Yes. Endless content. And so I think bounding it in is good. I think that kids will be so grateful when they become adults that to you as a parent, if you gave them boundaries and limits for their screen time, what happens, and this is something that you could attest to, I'm sure, and we can attest to now that we have older kids. So if you're listening and you have a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old, if you help their brains wire toward real life experiences, toward dance, toward theater, toward playing outside, toward baking, toward being with friends, that wiring sticks. And then when they hit those teen years and the college years, they're not quite as enticed by those video games because they already have these neural pathways that entice them toward real life opportunities. And you see the opposite as well, that when those pathways have been really primed for screens, a lot of these kids go off to college, they flounder, they don't know what to do with themselves, they have a hard time making decisions. There are long-term ramifications, and you can't really know that until you're in those spots, but you have to make decisions about it when your kids are very young. And so I've talked to this woman, Dr. Jean Twenge. She wrote a book called iGen. It's one of my favorites, The Internet Generation. She's a college professor, and she says the kids will show up in her college class and say, "I can't even make this simple decision without texting my parents. I don't know." I mean, a funnier book came out recently called What Time is Noon by Chip Layton. And he's talking about all these texts that people send their parents, like teens, and like they're like, where can I find the pasta water at the store? And you're like, these are little things that kids, they may not know. But he had a section about college, and the college kids are like, how do I get my clothes out of the washing machine? Do I just use my hands? You know, I mean, so the real life stuff really matters. Yeah. It matters for long-term life satisfaction.
This is so good. All right. So what do you say to the parent that says, okay, I'm in, but my kids are X years old. I'm starting late. Yeah. They are enticed already. They are addicted. And I'm afraid of a coup d'etat. I'm afraid of a revolt.
And there is going to be. I mean, there may be a coup d'etat. This is our spot as parents. I think information helps. I don't think anybody wants to be manipulated. And we're all being manipulated by screen manufacturers. So grab that book, Better Than Real Life, and talk to your kids about persuasive design. If they're of age, I think they're going to say, I don't want to be manipulated by that. So there's that piece of it. You can have a conversation. You can always change. You can always come in as a parent in anything. If you're talking about your food, your gut health, you know what? I just learned about, these food dyes. We're going to make a change. I just learned about, for me, seed oils. I just read this book called The Dorito Effect about artificial natural flavors. That changed my life. I can go to my kids and say, I just learned something new. I wish I would have known it 5 years ago. I didn't. We're going to make a change. There may be a revolt. And some of these addiction specialists are saying that kids will punch a hole in the wall, that they have to call the police. I mean, if it's gone that far, you may have to get outside help. But you can make a change as a parent, and your kids will thank you for that. I also believe that you put in the work to fill that time with something better and more substantial. And it's a lot on the parent's shoulders. It didn't used to be that way. I talk about, so my father-in-law, my husband's dad, he grew up on a street, and I don't ever know if the numbers are exactly right, but he grew up on a street where within the first 12 houses on each side, there was like 76 kids. Or, there was like 1 million kids. They're all Catholic. They've got all these kids. And so the houses were small. They're not going to be inside with their 7 brothers or sisters. There's nothing to do. So they all went outside and they played. And that's how society was set up. So the mom could get the different things done. It's not like that anymore. It is on now the shoulders of the parents to provide those different opportunities. And it's a lot. I want to acknowledge that it's a lot. But Kim John Payne says at the end of Simplicity Parenting that when we rescue our kids' childhoods, we remarkably, inevitably, day by day, rescue ourselves in return. And I think that that's the message. The message is that when you invest in real life experiences for your family, it enhances your life as well. There's the hope. That's the good news. My life is so much better. My life would not have been better had I just given them the iPad so that I could get this done or that done in a quiet space. No, my life is better. I see their lives are enhanced, but so is mine. And I think there's some fear there about the amount of effort that it will take. It does take some effort, but it is life enhancing for all.
Wow. Yeah. So the trade-off for everybody that's listening, like this seems scary for the parents out there. And if you're not a parent, I hope you're learning a lot from this episode, and share it with friends that are parents.
Sure.
So it is like, we're not sugarcoating it. It is more work, right? Because we are allowing technology to parent and babysit our kids. I mean, is that too harsh to say, or is that what's going on largely?
I would say that that's what's going on. Yes. Yeah. I just talked to Leonard Sachs, who wrote a book called The Collapse of Parenting. And he was telling me that a mother came in with her baby to his practice and said, how did people used to change diapers without screens? And he said, what are you talking about? And she said, well, like I just give my kid the phone and he watches SpongeBob SquarePants and that's how I change his diaper. And he was like, well, like that's your time. You interact with your baby and you give them a little tickle and you talk to them and you're right in there, you're right by their face. And so I do think that it becomes something that you get really dependent on and it's hard to break away. It becomes something that I think that's the addictive quality. It's quiet for the kid and it's quiet for the mom. It's quiet for the dad. And it's easy to get sucked into that.
Yeah. And maybe we need to call, like calling myself out, calling us as parents out too, because it starts with us. Like we have to be leading by example. We're kind of addicted to this screen stuff too. So that's probably another thing that people are afraid of. It's like, well, for one, that's the parenting sort of babysitter. But the other thing is like, I don't want to give up my social media time, right? I don't want to give up my YouTube time. So any advice for parents that maybe have problems, or maybe you're not a parent, maybe the person that's like, I spend too much time on my phone. What are some ways to start to wean yourself off of that?
I think it's the same answer, which is filling your life with what you want to fill it with first. That's what we always talk about. So you could tap dance. I mean, you could you could
such as like
you could
dancing.
crochet. You could read a really good novel. I think you have in this day and age, you have to go out of your way to find the thing. And I see that. Don't you see it? Yeah. There is a rise in hobbies. You see it with the sourdough baking. You see it with, I started a micro bakery in my home. People are doing all sorts of things, the cookies, and they're making cupcakes, and they're going on these cool adventures, or they're just, picking up a really good novel and making sure that they're reading something like that so that you don't lose. I mean, you lose that time. Nobody remembers what you scrolled on. And John Acuff says, time is your most valuable resource, but also your most vulnerable. It's a vulnerable resource. So we try and front load. Like, what do I really want in my life? I want to have relationships. We're going to have people over. We're going to invest. We're going to go spend time with these people. We're going to make our own homemade muffins or whatever it is. And then you just naturally run out of time for screens. That's our best day. Our best day is the day where we just didn't have time for it because we were living life.
See, I think the way your vantage point around this, your perspective on this is that, like, let's be intentional with our time. What are the fun things we can do versus like rules and regulations on time restrictions on screens? Yeah. Do you still have those, or is it because you're crowding out the screens, basically, you're not necessarily focused on this is your time?
We do. We still have boundaries. It's like Saturday mornings. I mean, we really are sort of trying to take that 80s model of, a little bit here or there, but nothing like crazy extensive. We do use screens, though. We use them in the car for long rides and things like that.
Okay.
So we're not anti-screen. We're just really trying to keep a balance. And you guys do that. I mean, you're out adventuring as a family, and it's an investment. There's a pastor in Cincinnati, Brian Tome, and he talks about, like, this is an investment. You're going to be investing your time. You're going to be investing your financial resources as well. And some of the stuff is free. I mean, a lot of things outside are very inexpensive, if not completely free. Eat your lunch out there instead of eating it inside, things like that. But the investment is a big, it almost has a bigger payoff now than maybe it even used to.
Yeah. When I was on your podcast, we talked about I talked about the science of Shinrin-yoku and forest bathing and like breathing the biome. Can you talk a little bit about that? And like, you talked about some of the health benefits, improved immune system, sunlight, circadian rhythms, physical movement, but like what are some of the other cool science out there around the health benefits of this?
Yeah, like the phytoncides,
yes,
the different things that you're breathing in. There's certainly that. There's the smells and all of the types of things that are coming from the trees. And there's also like the digging into the dirt. So, I mean, your books are so phenomenal. You're talking about the microbiome. Dr. Josh Axe talks about that too. But all that bacteria in the soil, we're meant to interact with. And then, I mean, you've got your whole book about the gut, right? That this is helping kids to form that. I mean, you should be the one probably talking about it, but you're probably in your mind like, she's not saying it right. If she would just say it this way.
No, I asked you. I want you to know.
But you're out there and you got your garden and your kids are digging in the dirt and they eat a carrot and you wipe it off and you don't, bathe it in a chlorine solution. All of that is going to help with your kids' long-term internal microbiome. So for the health benefits, there's a lot. For the cognition, there is too. And I think this is a big missing piece in our culture, which is that we're so focused on test scores, that we miss this piece. But the interesting part is that when we move our bodies in complex ways, now that could be dancing. Carla Hannaford has this book, Dr. Carla Hannaford, called Smart Moves, Why Learning is Not All in Your Head, which is a phenomenal book. She has a statistic in there that says elderly people who dance regularly have a 76% less chance of developing dementia. That's really high. That's really, really high. There's statistics about walking, and walking is maybe a 50% chance less chance of developing dementia, but dancing, 76% as you age. Well, why? It's because complex movements enhance and protect the neural wiring in your brain. So when you allow kids to move in complex ways, which is what they do outside, they naturally do that, right? They swing higher. Then they try and jump off and land. People listening will remember doing these things when they were a kid. You go on the merry-go-round, you're trying to climb over a fence. These are complex movements. And then as kids get older, they're skateboarding, they're throwing the football, they're trying to do trick shots at the basketball net. It is helping and improving their cognition so that learning is easier for them for a lifetime. And because we're in this rapidly changing world, we need kids who have rapidly moving brains that can think quick and that can adapt and that are resilient and that can take risks and are okay to try new things and are okay to fail and that they understand their body. Because the facts is, I read this book by, her name is Isabel Howe. It's called Love to Learn. She said, if you give your kid a standard childhood, like standardization is what the machines are going to take over. And I thought that was pretty deep, right? But if you give them this depth and breadth of experience, that's what makes them human. Yeah, and any machine can take over the facts at this point. But like, are you a creative person? Do you have an imagination? Can you come up with something out of nothing? Can you take pine cones and sticks and grass and do something with it? Can you negotiate with another 5-year-old? And that's a pretty good skill. Have you ever tried to negotiate with a 5-year-old?
It takes a skill.
It's a skill, but other 5-year-olds can do it.
Yeah.
And 7-year-olds can do it. I mean, they're gaining some significant skills when they play. So the physical, I think that's like your area of expertise. But there are a lot of things, and I think people are just even now coming to grips with, the colors of the sun, the full light spectrum of the sun. It changes throughout the day. It's meant to be a guide for your body. There's those colors that wake you up in the morning, and then it's bright midday. And then as the sun goes down, it changes to those blues and purples. These are signals for our body to, wake up, get the most out of your day, and then slow down. Yeah. And let that day end, and you're moving on to the next one. So I think people don't even totally have any clue.
We're scratching the surface.
We're scratching the surface.
Yeah, because we're part of nature, right? So you're like connecting yourself to sort of a battery pack, a charging pack.
Yeah, the grounding. We've got these grounding mats now. We were talking about that before we started. But, you're going to go up, you exchange electrons, apparently, with the earth. And I have no idea how that works.
Earth. Thank you.
Yes.
Here's mine. I'll have yours.
Yeah, a little bit of an exchange happens there. You go out barefoot, and all the barefoot is helping with all of the, to keep you balanced and that type of thing. So
do you do barefoot, like the kids barefoot at any point? Like a lot of
ours are barefoot some. Yeah. And I find even for myself though, if we go to a terrain that is sketchy, so, we'll be hiking and you're in maybe a little bit of a creek bed, or, you're at the base of a waterfall and you're trying to get through these rocks that are mossy and wet. I have to be barefoot. My kids are a little more nimble with their if they've got shoes or like these different types of whatever hiking sandals. But I mean, for me, I'm like, I'm not as nimble. You start to lose your agility. I mean, that's another benefit. Nature helps kids be agile. It helps them be strong in ways that, you might not even get in a gym. So there's a lot going out there.
Movements at its very best, purest form. Well, okay, specifically something came up to me to ask you is social media as kids get older. What did you guys do personally? Like, did you introduce?
We're still not there. Greta,
okay, so this is a big deal.
We're not there
because this is rare.
Yes,
a 16-year-old without social media is really rare. I mean, you probably hear it in the community, right?
He pretty much asks me every single day. And I just say no. I mean, it's a daily conversation.
This is good to hear.
We do. He does have a thing called Be Real. So I would say that counts as social media.
Yeah.
That's for me, it's entry level. It's gotten a little more sticky, which is the words that they use. It seemed a lot more innocuous, and now it's a little more sticky than it was.
So can you explain that? Like what the stickiness
sticky is
factor
like
of social media?
What keeps your eyes there. So whatever the trickery, tomfoolery is of what keeps your eye. So Instagram changed their algorithm to be what you might want to see. YouTube did the same thing, and then their profits skyrocketed. So social media can start off with like, here's a picture of what I did today, one thing. And then somehow it's like, well, now you can have groups where now you can like each other's. Now you can leave comments. It makes it more sticky. Instagram is the one that's like the silver bullet. And we've just continued to say no. My friend Greta Eskridge just wrote a book called It's Time to Talk to Your Kids About Porn. And I wrote the intro to it. The foreword, I guess, is what it's called. And she did no social media until 18. And, I mean, we're not missing out on anything, I don't think. I mean, I don't regret it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of drama there. And we were talking too about like dating. Social media adds a lot of drama to dating. And there was a time when our teen said, he only said it once, but he said it was for one day. He said, in retrospect, I'm glad I don't have Instagram. But then now he still asks for it. But there was one day where he did tell me he was glad he didn't have it.
We had the same thing with Solomon, my son. He'd fight us on it, but he'd thank us. Because he looked around and he was like, he had enough clarity to say, I don't want to be like them, but it's still that pull of wanting to be one of the guys, one of the friends, fit in.
And there's business things. Like, he's like, I make beets. I'm not quite sure what that is, but it's
like
something.
The plant, the vegetable,
it's not that.
Okay.
It's not actual beets. It's like some sort of BEAT. And it's like he thinks it could enhance his connections. Like, if I could send my beat to this artist, and I'm like, I mean, there may be some validity there.
Yeah, the entrepreneurial spirit that you are cultivating.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, it's a tricky thing, but we still have said no. But he'll ask me today. And they'll ask me tomorrow. Hold the line, parents. Hold the line.
You have your ears to the ground, the pulse of parents around the world in your community. Like, how young are kids going on social media now? I mean, how
Oh, this is young. And exposure to pornography is also very young. So the average age of getting a phone is 10, and I think average age for social media is 12, and then that's average. So like, we've got our kids that were on the other end of the average, which means there's kids that are 6, 7, 8. They're faking it. They're getting the accounts. And there is a lot of pressure I feel for today's kid. I think it's an unfair situation that we put them in. The school should absolutely have a policy of no phones, because what kind of pressure do you put on a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old when other kids have it? And I spoke at a school board meeting recently about recess being cut short. And I also spoke at a school district in the same area where they wanted me to come in and talk about getting kids outside. And when it was over, they had a time for questions. And this mom raised her hand. She had a 5-year-old, and she starts crying. And she said, they gave my 5-year-old son an iPad for his classroom learning. He brings it back and forth to school, this iPad, and there's no restrictions. So he says all of the other kids play Minecraft, which is probably not true, but when you're a kid, it feels like all of the other kids. And she says, and my kid feels left out, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to tell him. She's crying. And I didn't know what to say either. I mean, if I'm brought in by the school district, I don't think that the school district should be giving a 5-year-old iPad. You're putting everybody in a lose-lose situation, except for the corporations that are making gobs and gobs and gobs of money off of it.
Wow. It is true. I mean, kids in the church, they're giving these devices, and at that point, it's part of their academics, right?
Yes.
They're like forcing these devices
no
on them.
textbooks. I just talked to a mom who said she had pulled her kids from school, and that was part of the reason, because every single thing was online, and that's not good for your eyes. Your eyes actually, when they look at a screen, they bounce all over. And they're not supposed to. They're supposed to, left to right, or, you learn how to read. And there's so much research about how when you handwrite notes and when you're looking at a book, you feel the weight of it. It's a sensory experience, but on the screen, it's not. So she said the kid would have to take a picture of the homework on the phone, then put, and it was just, I don't know. It's not behooving our kids.
No.
But there are some tech elite that are making so much money off of it, and they're not using it for their own kids.
Yeah. Well, it's so true. So true. My son, who's now a freshman in college, he's been on the podcast before as a guest, but when he started enrolling, we've homeschooled for years. And when I say we, I mean my wife homeschooled for years.
You got the nod over there.
Yes, the queen. He was overwhelmed by all the tech stuff and not enough textbooks. And the university was like, no, everything's digital. He went and paid. We paid for the textbook because he would rather have had the book and read it. Yeah. Look, I get there's somewhere in the middle. I think we have to live in modern times. We can't be like full on Amish, but it's striking that balance, which is difficult, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, so I interview authors a lot, and occasionally I'll make an exception if someone is like really a big deal. But for the most part, I say I have to have the physical book. You can send me an advance copy. We can wait until the book comes out, because if I try and read a book on a screen, it hurts my eyes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm like, maybe I'm a grandmother, but
no, eye strain is a real thing. I mean, it's like one of the basic issues that people are having from being on screens for too long.
Yeah, and I do not absorb that book. So there's been a couple books that I've read. I don't remember them. I took notes off of them, but I don't remember them like I do when I've had a physical book that I've written notes in and underlined the different things. And people have given me a hard time. They're like, well, you read my book. But I'm like, I read that one on a screen, and it's not the same.
And through this conversation, it is obvious that you are a voracious reader.
I do.
Any people that want to be better at reading books, any tips you have for?
I try and read 3 chapters a day. There we go. And if you could do 1 out of 3 books, not if you have a baby, you're not going to be able to do this if you have a toddler. But if you have older kids and you got a little bit of time and you could try and get through 3 chapters a day, you're going to be reading a book every week and a half. And that's a lot of books over the course of a year. I keep books with me because you get little bits of time here and there. And so instead of pulling out my phone, I might read a paragraph or 2. I also read for my job, so that's different, right? So there's a little bit different motivation. But novels are really good for your brain, for your emotional development. It's a great use of time. There's so many wonderful books out there. I think it's a great use of life.
Yeah. What do you do when you're done reading a book? Do you donate them? Or?
Well, no, because they're written in. I mean, they are written into the nth degree. We have a whole system. So Josh is over there. So we have a whole system. So you'll like this. So the system is some books end up in the basement. And it is on a secret list if your book is in the basement, and we hope that list never gets out because we'll feel bad for those people. But then other people's we leave out, like your stack. I've got your stack, right? Okay. It's all there. They're all together. They're not in the basement. Nope. The basement is sort of like the place where if we ever need it, yes, we still have it. But otherwise we have a lot of bookshelves. We have a lot. We have increased our bookshelf list, bookshelf space over the past several years. And occasionally, if we get more than 1 copy, we definitely give those ones away. But I write in my books.
Even like a book that's a novel, that's not necessarily
so, okay, let me tell you what I do with my novels.
Yeah.
I censor them. So I'll scribble out all the smut, and then I let my kids read them. So
okay.
I feel like this could be a business. I even bought a website called censoredbymom.com. And I thought, well, I could get parents, because you're like, there is a lot. I'm like, I want my kids to read good books, and they're teens, and some of it is just like, it's unnecessary cursing. Just take it out, Yeah. So I take it out sometimes. And so those aren't getting donated either because people will be like, why is this line crossed out?
Censored by Mom.
Yes. And I write it in the front. If it's censored by Mom, then they know they can come read
awesome.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your community now is, as I mentioned, worldwide. How many people are you reaching at this point with this movement?
I don't
millions.
Yeah. But I will say that for many years it was 0.
Okay.
Full 0.
Just you at a park in Michigan.
Just me posting, and I was using my own hashtag. It was like I put a hashtag 1,000 hours outside. Just me, it was mine. And then about 3 years in, another person used it. I was like, oh. So,
there's another one.
Yes, someone used it. People thought it was really a dumb idea, to be honest. And they made fun of me a little bit. And
wow.
Because it was odd. It was very odd at the time. You're spending that much time outside, and also you keep track of it. Why would you do that? But it changed our life, which is why we continue to talk about it. It has worked, like I said, all the way through the whole gamut of childhood. And so just keep sharing what we're doing. And people have also found that it works for them too.
Yeah. Before we go, I have to ask you about this. You drove through the night to go to DC on the day that RFK was confirmed. You were in the room.
Yes.
When Bobby Kennedy was confirmed. So tell us what was the behind the scenes?
That was absolutely incredible. So the behind the scenes, first of all, is that it was a very last minute situation. So there was going to be tickets, and then there wasn't tickets, and there was going to be seats, and then there wasn't seats. And so it started at 9:00 one morning, and then we found out about it 9:00 the night before. So in a 12-hour period, it was like, can you get to DC from Michigan? So we took 1 hour to grab stuff, drop kids off at grandparents, and we drove through the night. We got dressed at a rest stop and went. And it was monumental. I mean, I was very honored, just like being at Kellogg's, very honored to be part of the picture of the health and well-being of children and families. And what stuck out to me the most was how little real health was talked about, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. How little those types of things were brought up, the things that we're talking about today. Gut health, microbiome, getting outside, sunlight, recess. Nobody brought up recess. Nobody brought up that kids are doing their schoolwork on screens. Nobody brought up social media. And there was just an onslaught about vaccinations. And from my view, there's a lot of vaccinations. It's like 70 something, or, I'm like, well, we've done that. We've gone that path. What about all of these other things that we're missing? And it was just, I think by being there and watching it, we were in the second row, watching it firsthand, just vaccine. I mean, I made a reel about it. People got really mad.
Yeah, I was a collab. Thank you for adding me on that.
People got very mad about it.
They did.
But I was like, if you were to sit there for 4 hours and you heard the word vaccine 200 times, but you know what you never heard? Sunlight. You know what you never heard? Movement. None of it.
Basic free
No one
stuff.
talked about the fact that kids are sitting for 9 hours a day. No one talked about the fact that in all of these school districts, so many of them recess is only 20 minutes. No one talked about how we don't use textbooks anymore. No one talked about any of that. No one talked about the food dyes. No one talked about the seed oils. No one talked about the natural flavorings, which is something I'm learning about right now. It's like very, very eye-opening. Nobody talked about hydroponics. Like nobody talked about any of that stuff. And I just felt like it really shortchanged the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a distraction, right? They're just singular.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Just
Money.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I think. I think it's a whole racket. I mean, people are making a ton of money. And, I'm not obviously the biggest expert on this. I know Dr. Joel Gator talks about it a lot, but we have vaccine injury in our family. We had a child who got shots and then couldn't walk for 10 days. And there was nothing, they couldn't tell me anything about it. And he collapsed and we took him in for all these x-rays and there was nothing. And thank goodness it wasn't worse, but we have kids on both ends of those health spectrums and some of them are healthier and we can see that firsthand in our family. And when I posted about that, I lost 30,000 followers, wow, 30,000, which is a lot. And I also had 1,000 people. I mean, so many people send private message after private message. Thank you. I'm too scared to say anything. I had this vaccine injury in my family or myself, and it was message after message after message, and people are scared. And that's not fair. We shouldn't be scared to talk about kids' health and our health and our own experience. Absolutely. And that was my experience sitting in a room for 4 hours where we're talking about the health of a nation and not any of these other things that do contribute greatly to our health and well-being. It's not just your physical health. It's also like how you feel in the world and how you move in your body and the relationship that you have and relationships that you have. Like that contributes to health. Nothing. It's like crickets.
Yeah.
And if people are making a lot of money. You saw people afterwards say, well, this person, there was the one with Bernie Sanders and he was like, you sell this onesie for $26. And then it was like, well, this is how much money he's made. And I didn't know this is how much money he's made from the pharmaceuticals. So there is, Kim Jong-un calls it an undeclared war on childhood. I would say maybe it's not even undeclared anymore. I would say it's fairly declared. And it's coming from people who stand to make gobs of money off of the health and well-being of our children and our families. And it's coming from the tech industry, the toy industry. Watch out for those AI toys, parents. This is a big deal. You do not want a lot of push button stuff. You want wooden toys. Let the kids use their imagination. Do not give the imagination to them. It's going to stunt their growth from here on out. The world is looking for the creative person. So, and obviously the pharmaceuticals and the food, it's all in cahoots so that people are dependent. And Huxley said they come to love the prisons that they've created for themselves. It's something like that, Yeah. So
Callie Means was on the podcast recently. He said the same thing. He said this really comes down to a war on kids.
Yeah.
And this is like a center point of what's happening culturally right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's happening. We just had a horrific experience at our church where there was a pedophile on staff. He's accused 9 felonies, and we sent in information and they kicked us out of the church. So, I mean, there's wars on children in a lot of ways, but I believe that parents have the strength. You band together with other parents and you can push back. And I think that in those ways, change will happen. I think we're going to raise a generation of strong kids who are going to follow in our footsteps and won't be afraid to come on the bullhorn and to do the march and to speak at the thing because they saw their parents do it.
Wow. Great way to end. But before we go, the podcast is called The Art of Being Well. At the end of every episode, we have Your Art of Being Well. What's the worst tasting healthy food that you eat? It tastes freaking disgusting, but you do it for health benefits. And some people don't have any. They love everything that they eat, but some
does it have to be a food?
No.
It's like that green powder that you put in a drink.
Yeah.
There's different
ones.
There's different ones, so I don't want to put anybody on blast. But it's like I'm supposed to be like what you're like micronutrients and it's green and you feel like you're eating a horse pen, drinking a horse pen. Yeah, it's disgusting. I even try and do it with my nose plugged. I can't do it.
No way. No, you haven't found a way that.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of mushrooms either. It's the texture.
Same. Me with mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
You like mushrooms, Em? No, Josh, you like mushrooms? We have one of 25% of us mushroom fans. Okay, next question. Do you take supplements? It sounds like you do. But what are maybe two lesser known supplements that you do? Do you take anything that people would be surprised about?
Well, no one would be surprised that we try and supplement vitamin D in the winter in Michigan. And this question is like a little nerve-wracking because I'm like, maybe I'm going to say something that's super weird.
No.
And then in the winter, sometimes oregano, like a high dosage of oregano that helps keep us not sick. I have something someone just gave me called CGF, which is supposed to help with your blood sugar.
Okay. CGF, I don't know.
Okay.
It's not ringing a bell, the acronym.
Maybe it's CFG.
We'll find it. We'll
find
it
out. You know what? We're not huge on supplements.
It's okay. Food is first.
Yeah, food and just movement and outdoors. And really what we're trying to do is pull out of the food system. That's where we're at on our journey here, which is really trying to cut back on those the dark calories, the seed oils, and the things that we've already talked about.
Yeah. Do you have a garden?
Yes, we do. It stinks. Okay. We grow flowers and we can't eat them. But, we've never grown a full tomato that's not been eaten by something else. But our kids love it. It is so wonderful. And you get what you get. And we like the farmers markets. And I'm ordering seeds here soon. We're going to start in April. So I think that's a wonderful, wonderful use of time.
Yeah, for sure. Where's somewhere you haven't gone that's on your bucket list from a travel standpoint?
Ooh, we were just talking about this. Nowhere. I like Michigan, so I'm not super interested.
I'm good where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm good where I'm at. I have nothing. Nothing comes to mind. Joel Salatin talks about that. Uh-huh. He talks about like being really happy at your home, and that we feel like that we live these lives feeling like our home is not enough. And so we're sort of chasing that a lot of times.
I love that. That's some deep wisdom right there.
His books are really challenging. They're very convicting. They're some of my favorites I've ever read. Should I say Disney? Yeah, that will give me some cool points with Amber.
We are Disney nerds.
We have been to Disney, and I was blown away. I thought this place is so overhyped, and then I was like, oh, I get it. It is like perfectly clean. They have somehow gotten rid of every bug. Talk about
don't ask how.
Yep. I know people were like, don't let your kid play in the mulch, but we were there and our kids were pretty young. It's been a bit. And one of our daughters started to cry because she couldn't go on one of the rides. She wasn't tall enough. And I kid you not, it was like someone appeared out of nowhere. It was like they weren't there, and it was like they just appeared, and they had an ice cream for her. And I was like, what? Because she had been crying for like a half a second. And I was like, what? Are you a hologram? What's happening?
They have a person just for crying kids. You give them an ice cream, probably.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Disney ride?
Well, I get motion sick, so I like that Dumbo thing. That's one, right?
Yeah, Dumbo.
Yeah. And you press the lever, and you get to go up. Yeah, so I liked that one. Mainly, though, we had little kids when we went, so I would just stay with the little kids, and Josh went on the rides. But I get motion sick for sure.
Okay.
So
we'll keep it
but we could go with you, and you guys could probably show us the ropes.
Oh, absolutely.
What's your favorite ride?
Guardians of the Galaxy in Epcot.
Okay.
For sure. We'll take you on that. It'll be fun.
And you probably know like all the ins and outs. Like there's all sorts of really cool, I like that. Like little Easter egg things that you can
we'll
find.
give you all the hidden Mickeys. Yeah.
Yeah.
It will be a blast.
It's
my side hustle is like taking friends to Disney.
Okay. I did really like this Monsters Inc. where you went in and they were able to like make jokes about people in the audience.
Yes.
I thought that was brilliant.
It was.
We did that like 3 times.
Yeah. That's at Magic Kingdom too, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Laugh Factory. Which I think they may have closed that. Are they closing that Laugh Factory? Maybe. I don't know.
And there's new stuff.
There's a lot of new stuff.
Yeah.
So
we're going to be at a conference together in Florida near Disney in May.
Hopefully you'll come with us.
Maybe we'll come early. Yeah.
Okay.
You can show us the ropes.
Where do people go to learn about all the things that you're doing?
Okay. I am the least creative person in the world. So everything is 1,000 Hours Outside. And in fact, I have 3 books that are all called 1,000 Hours Outside, which is so ridiculous. And clearly I'm not good at what I do, but 1000hoursoutside.com.
Is it part 1, part 2, part 3?
No, they're just same title. I don't really know what happened. So, and then I have a book called Until the Streetlights Come On, which is a fantastic book about how when we sort of have that return to play, it prepares our kids for the future. It makes today better, but it also prepares them for the future, which I think is the thing that parents need to know the most. Yeah. This is not a detractor from your everyday life. This is an enricher, and also something that has lifelong, like these benefits are lifelong. The developmental benefits, they last for, the social benefits, they last for a very long time. So I have that book, Until the Streetlights Come On, and a book coming out in May called Homeschooling.
Oh, amazing.
No one had taken that title. So when
What?
it's called Homeschooling, you're doing it right just by doing it. So if you're listening in and you're sort of been on the fence, we cannot recommend homeschooling more. I mean, it's our best choice we've ever made. We don't make that many good choices anyways, but still, it's our best choice. Zero regrets. We've really loved that. So if people are sort of interested, I have that book coming out. And then we have an app, a top-ranked app called 1,000 Hours Outside. There we go. And I don't know, I'm looking at Josh if I forgot anything else. Website, podcast.
Oh, yeah, podcast.
It's called 1,000 Hours Outside. And that's where you'll find us.
This is great, Ginny. This has been a blessing. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.